Welcome to My on Mondays, an explorative approach to the possessive my through narratives, art, and sound. Each Monday brings a new creation and unique perspective. My on Mondays is brought to you by MING Studios, a contemporary art space and international artist residency program dedicated to the exhibition, experience, and exploration of arts and culture. Along with exhibiting artists from around the world, MING also serves the community by hosting innovative programs including performances, workshops, screenings, readings, artist talks, and other cultural activities. For more information, or if you'd like to participate in My on Mondays, you can visit our website at mingstudios.org. Hello and welcome to the 55th episode of My on Mondays. Today we have an interview with actor and writer Jodeen Revere, who we're lucky to have as a regular contributor to MING Studios programming. You can listen to her earlier contributions to My on Mondays in Episode 8, My Getaway, and Episode 20, My First Glimpse Through a Pervy Lens. In addition to her work on stage, in film, and readings of her personal essays, she's been part of two migration theory site-specific productions, S5 and Small Matters. Her first reading at MING in 2019 became the springboard for her one-woman show, The Persistent Guest, a darkly humorous story of her trifecta of cancer experiences, less than desirable relationships, and life philosophy. After several postponements due to COVID, The Persistent Guest finally opens this Saturday at Boise Contemporary Theater. This show is not to be missed. Check out the link to get your tickets. So, good morning, Jodeen. I'm so happy to have you here today and get to talk to you. I have some fun questions I'd like to ask you, but I want to dive right in and talk a little bit about your upcoming performance that we're all eagerly awaiting.
The 3-year pregnancy, yeah. Exactly.
By the time we finally release this interview, we will know the date. So
great, yay!
So the title of your one woman show is called The Persistent Guest, and
Correct.
back in 2019, you did a live reading at MING that has evolved into this show. Can you take us back to the beginnings of this piece and how it began?
Sure. So it started, all of the parts and pieces of it, I started writing a blog. Surprise, who doesn't write a blog? When I was diagnosed with cancer the second time, I've had that 3 times I've gone through that. So this first one was a lump that was removed. I did not do chemo or radiation. And then 6 months later, it resurfaced. And then at that point in time, I had a mastectomy. And then I went through chemo and started writing, started a blog and started writing about it, just mostly as a way to get for all of my friends and people and community to be able to have a sense of what was going on rather than having to endlessly answer the questions or reach out. It was just sort of like, hey, go read the blog and you'll know what's happening.
Okay.
So I wrote that, kept that going, and and it was very satisfying. I think it was maybe the first time I really started to feel like a writer. I guess I had kept a newsletter for probably 5 years prior to that I sent out to clients and for my massage therapy and for my yoga teaching things and acting gigs I did. But it was the first time I started feeling like, I don't know, like it started resonating with me of like, oh, you actually, some of this is kind of good. So anyway, I did that. And then through the course of that, people really resonated with it and they were like, you should write a book. And I was like, oh, yeah, maybe. And then it dawned on me that I had already it was written. It was just a matter of sort of stitching it together in some sort of coherent way. So I had started to work with an editor with the idea of it being essentially a book of essays, because they're all sort of journal entry kinds of things. And in the process of that, Elizabeth McKetta, my fabulous Elizabeth McKetta, writer, poet, editor, friend, the people at Ming had reached out to her about doing a reading, and she was like, you should contact Jodeen. And so you did contact me. And I thought, well, I will do a reading of what is going to be this book, like some things from that. And so I started putting things together. And then by the time I actually did it that night at the Ming, it sort of became clear that as an actor, I had actually written a one-woman show, and it's not really a book. So that's the long director's cut answer to your question.
Yeah. Well, it was a fantastic reading. I mean, it was so engaging. I mean, I think one of the things that happens a lot of times with writers who are not also actors is, you know, a lot of writers are very introverted and they're very shy, and so they have this beautiful work that they've done, and then they get up to read it and you can barely hear them, and and they're miserable.
It's a painful experience. Yeah, exactly.
And so it was so fantastic to watch you and listen to you, and I think I cried at least twice during the performance.
I think I did too.
But it was also funny. I mean, you really take us on the whole trip, you know.
That's great.
Really fantastic. So this has turned into a one-woman show, and you've received a lot of support for this.
A tremendous amount of support. So the night that I did the reading at the Ming, and you know, all of my sweet supporters and friends and stuff, but two of the people that were in the audience that night were Benjamin Burdick, who is the new artistic director at BCT, managing director at BCT, and his wife Jessica Morris, and they are both brilliant actors and directors and lovely people and dear friends of mine, and I invited them to the reading. And so they came, and after the reading they came up to me, and Ben was like, why the hell are we not developing this as a show? And I was like, oh yeah, it kind of dawned on me that this actually is a show as I started doing it tonight. And so he was like, let's talk. So we met and had coffee, I don't know, a week or two later, and started discussing that, and then started doing a little bit of an editing project. And we were going to do it as a sort of a world premiere staged reading in March of 2020. And then I was supposed to have an actual run at BCT. I would be in their season. So I had all this tremendous support in being able to do that. And then, you know, the plug got pulled, like the plug got pulled on everybody doing their stuff. So, on the world. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. As we do this interview, you're still on a pause, but by the time we put out this podcast, we'll have all of the information, because it's not just a show. You also filmed it as well. Am I correct?
Yeah. In a year ago in April, we filmed it. We spent a week filming it in the theater. I had presented the idea to Ben when we were not able to do it live as a show, and wanting to kind of keep some momentum going. And also, truly, I mean, from a personally very selfish aspect, I just said, hey, you know what? I'm sure we'll get to do this live in front of people, because I know that it will happen. It's just a matter of when. It's not an if, it's a matter of when. But I also said, you know what? I've had cancer 3 times. And if I don't live to, like, I would be really pissed if this doesn't exist. So let's film it so that we know that there's like a documentation of this. And he was like, yeah, I mean, he took it to the board and they were like, yes, go ahead and film this. So we filmed it. It's a feature film, not done in the way of just like, you know, a stagnant camera filming someone do a stage thing, but it has a very filmatic sort of element to it. It's quite singular and it's really beautiful, and I'm very proud of it. We're still in some post-production stuff, but yes, once I have done the show live on stage, then we will do a premiere release for the film, and it's the same. Great. It's the same script, but there has been a little bit of editing that's happened. But mostly, it's just you're having there's nothing like sitting in a theater and seeing a live performance.
Yeah.
So just two different flavors of that story, which
Yeah.
I think people will be excited to see both of them, I hope.
I am for sure.
Yay.
I know you as quirky and wonderful adult Jodeen, and and I'm curious to know a little bit about young Jodeen and her influences. And someone recently asked me a question that I thought was a fantastic interview question. So it's, who were your idols as a child?
Oh, wow.
And the second part of the question is also, when did you realize you wanted to become an actor?
Um, wow. I think always.
Hmm.
My father was a musician and performer, and so I grew up around sort of that nuttiness of that world.
Hmm.
And he was a very, very funny performer of a man. I mean, really, when I don't think of him as a musician, I think of him as a performer, and so I think
Hmm.
some of that kind of came from him for sure. Um, but I was a voracious reader as a child, and I still
Hmm.
am. I devour books at and kind of an amazing rate. So books have always been very important to me. Film has always been very important to me. I don't think I ever actually saw a live theater performance until I was probably 10 or 12. Um, and I remember just being mind blown by that. Like, those are live people on
Hmm.
stage doing this thing. And so that was always interesting to me. But story,
Hmm.
the story and yeah, the costumes. And, I was a huge fan of musicals. And so singing all the lyrics to all of the songs and all of the things. I think the first the first thing that really took me was when the film Fiddler on the Roof came out.
Hmm.
I saw that movie in theater 7 times, and I was 8 years old, 9 years old, and was smitten with that story. One, I wanted to be Jewish. I thought that, like, I really thought that I should maybe, like, change tacks there.
Hmm.
But just the story, and the dad and the daughters trying to find their independence, and people being sent out of the country, and just weeping in the theater. I mean, I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I remember trying to talk to kids in grade school, like, have you seen this movie? Do you understand the important? Kids were just looking at me like, I was watching Scooby Doo yesterday. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So I was just always a weird, sort of too mature for my age, too artistically involved for probably my own good, most of the time. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
No, I mean, I think
um,
so. I think so. That, I mean, idols aren't necessarily a single person, you know. Influences is maybe a better question, but I kind of like the idea of idols, even though many of us didn't really have them.
right.
Mm,
Yeah, just people who were acting, people who were in the arts, like,
mm-hmm.
that was my gravitational pull for sure.
Yeah. I'm curious about your creative process, and this is something I've talked to other artists about occasionally. And for you, maybe it's a little bit different because I've never talked to an actor about this before. But what is your ideal environment for creating? Because a lot of us, when we create, we're doing it alone, which I imagine you're doing when you're
Sure.
writing. But for acting, it's a
Right.
little bit different.
Just, I mean, because acting it's a collaborative, it
Mm-hmm.
is a collaborative thing. It's not a do alone thing. Well, sometimes it is. Well, I'm doing a one woman show, so kind of, sort of,
Mm-hmm.
um, but still, I'm working very much in conjunction with a director who has eyes on what is going on, and I'm getting the feedback of what is working and what is not working, and
Mm-hmm.
um, but ideally, just sort of an environment as an actor is just to be with with other people, that community of other people, and ideally a group of people that are good at what they do. I mean, to quote to quote my daughter, like, my goal is always to be the dumbest person. Like my
Mhm.
biggest delight is to be the dumbest person in the room.
Mhm.
Like I want to be surrounded with people that are so much better than I am,
Mhm.
so that I can learn, so that I have something to strive for. And yeah, generous actors who listen and pay attention, and are not about trying to grandstand, but there's a
Mhm.
very generous sort of give and take. Like that is the juiciest thing in the world, is to be with real professional people.
Yeah.
And the
It's,
same, I'm sure, for you. I mean, with musicians, with people that, like nobody's trying to grandstand, but everybody's
mhm.
like really listening and supportive of, and um, yeah, helping.
That is the ideal
Yeah.
environment, isn't it? I mean, especially when you are when you're involved in the arts, and I imagine in any kind of discipline, there is so much competition. I used to sing for performing groups, and there was always, it was just about the money or the competition, seeing who's better than
Wow.
who, and I just thought, I hate this.
Oh,
This is
yeah.
terrible. Like I don't want to
Right.
do this anymore. What is the point? This isn't why I got into this in the first place. And
Right.
and then I came here and began performing with a group that was just like, I mean, everyone cared about each other. Everyone was in it for the love of the art. And that's the essence of it, isn't it? I mean, I think that,
Absolutely. And
or
that
at
you're
least
able
what it
to.
should be.
I Exactly. I mean, I think that is what it should be.
Mhm.
I do not have a competitive bone in my body, and if I'm ever
Mhm.
put in a situation of where there's like a competition, I'm just like, I'm out. Like I just
Mhm.
tap out immediately. I'm
Mhm.
like, no, don't like that at all.
Yeah.
Which does not mean that you can't. Not being competitive does not mean that you are lazy, or don't like hone your skills, or don't do your work, or don't bring it to the table at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be at the expense of someone else,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, at
Well put.
all. And so, yeah, that's the striving for, when everybody realizes that, the better you are, the better they are, the better it holds up the whole project, the better the whole show is.
Mhm.
So it's not a matter of being better than someone else. It's about everybody, like, this is the total thing will be a better thing if we all are the best that we can possibly be.
Yeah.
So,
So that brings me to the next question. What do you think is the most important thing about yourself? And it doesn't necessarily even have to be a good thing. It's just something that you think is important, maybe either for you to know or for others to know.
wow, what a great question. Um, I think I will always, I'm going to swear, I think I always own up that I'm an asshole. Um, um, I don't pretend I'm not.
Hmm.
Um, I am very judgmental. I don't like lots of things or people. um, um, I'm very happy alone. And at the same time, I'm also very social and very collaborative in the way that I like to do things. I don't know. I'm kind of an idiot, and I'm always willing to just be like, hey, I thought I knew, but I don't know. Now I've changed my mind. And I thought I was doing a good thing, and now actually I've realized I'm kind of a dick. And so I apologize for that. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's maybe,
So I think maybe,
yeah.
as the listener, what how that sort of translates in my mind is there's a part of you that's coming from a place of honesty and sincerity
Hopefully, yes. I mean, that
and
is always,
humility.
yeah, yeah. Even when I'm being a dick.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hard to admit that, you know?
right.
Yeah, and so a willingness maybe.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't have a false humility. I mean, I think there's nothing more annoying than people who are so self-effacing, and so like won't own the I'm good at this thing. And it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to say that you're good at a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Own it.
Yeah.
Own what you do, but also I don't know. My daughters told me this. She was like, I have never met anybody who is like so utterly content with their life and like enjoys being alive more than you do. Like you just really love being here and you're really content and happy and get really delighted over things that other people are like, really? That's not exciting to you? I don't know. I just think it's super neat to be here. And I think that I'm in a constant state of sort of wonder and delight about most of the stuff that happens in my world. And I feel very fortunate around that.
Do you think that comes from coming, I don't want to say close to death, but
Oh,
into that
yeah.
confrontation, or is this something that you've always sort of, it's always been a
No,
part
I
of
think
you?
I think that is a part of it. And I also think um I don't know, maybe aging is part. I just turned 60. It
Hmm.
was my birthday on Tuesday.
Happy
So
birthday.
there's 60.
Yeah.
Um, I spent a lot of my life extremely, I was like a Seinfeld child, like just ironic and snarky and pessimistic. And that just really sort of ruled a lot of how I was for a very, very long time. And
Hmm.
I don't have much of that in my makeup anymore. And I think maybe that's part of it. It's kind of mellowed me out. I think once you've gone through that, now I'm just sort of like, it's like, really? Like, what else could possibly happen? Like I'm going to be worried about that. I don't think I'm going to be worried about that. I'm
Hmm.
going to be
Hmm.
mad because I'm stuck in traffic or because,
Hmm.
I owe money in taxes. I'm like, seriously, what are they going to do? Put me in jail? I don't think
Hmm.
so. Like, are you going to worry about that? No, I'm not going to worry about that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for a walk and have a nice day and do that. So,
So, as someone who lives this really rich life, and you carry this sense of what seems sort of like magic or deep awareness or gratitude or whatever it is, what do you think you could not live without in this life? What would make it unlivable? And I mean, there's the obvious, like losing our children, or but
sure.
is there something else?
The first thing I want to say is cheese. If there was no cheese, there would really be no point to anything.
That's a fantastic answer. I
Cheese
love
is
that.
good. For the love of God, don't take her cheese away from her.
Sometimes
um,
the simplest answers are
this,
so much better than the profound.
oh my God. Probably because of that, I don't know. I am a very funny person. I have a really twisted sense of humor,
Mm,
and if I were not laughing and genuinely delighted
mm,
and struck silly by things, I just
mm.
don't see what the point would be. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, the world is on fire,
Hmm.
and how like that is all you've got.
Yeah.
It's kind of all we have. Not to be dismissive, not to be flippant at all around anything, but it's like there's only so much. Actually, there's so little we have any control over at all.
Yeah.
So all you can do is like live, you know, a kind, hopefully creative, lovely life and be kind to other people and yeah, don't add any extra stuff to the fire. And that's kind of all we can do.
Beautiful. I have one last question for you, and
Sure.
we've talked about the persistent guest, which is now completed, other than the final stages of editing for the film, and we're just awaiting
The
the
water to break. Yes,
yes,
exactly.
waiting the premiere date, but I'd like to know what you're working on currently and what you're looking forward to.
Um, I have been doing some writing. I was in a writing group for like all of last year that was really lovely. We met once a week, and that was
Mm.
really great to just to be able to, have people read things and to get some feedback and read other
Mm-hmm.
people's things and have assignments. I mean, and to have that accountability
Yeah.
is really important. I am a profoundly lazy person, and so it's nice to be held accountable and have like deadlines to do things. That's very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped the class because I thought I was going to do my show, and I haven't quite jumped back on the wagon yet. But
Mm-hmm.
I've been writing like mostly lots of personal essays, that is what I do. My daughter is actually she's a screenwriter, and she can actually create dialogue and characters and story in a way that I can just like regurgitate very self-involved personal things.
Mm-hmm.
She can do that. She can do that too. But I mean, that other skill of like actually like creating another story and characters, that's not in my toolkit at all.
Mm.
So hats off to that. But yeah, working on some personal essays, some things like along that line, and still, keeping my brain slightly in this script, but not wanting to burn myself out before we have the opportunity to go back into rehearsal
Mm-hmm.
to polish it before we do it again. Um, yeah, and then I really look forward to, hopefully be able to take this show to some other cities that I can tour it to some other cities would be nice.
Mm.
And then
Absolutely.
because I wrote it, then it's the publishing rights are available for it so that someone else could buy the rights and do the show, which I think would be fascinating to see someone else do the show, like
That
what
would
that
be
would look like
really
on someone else. I
fascinating.
think would be great.
Yeah.
I think it would be great. So I look forward to having those experiences, and then I will be really ready to not ever tell this story again or do it or perform it,
I can
and just
imagine.
put it, yeah, and just move on. It already feels like it feels so far removed from my current reality,
Mm-hmm.
because it had, the beginnings of this were like 10 years ago. And so it feels like something that happened a long, long time ago to someone that I kind of know,
Mm-hmm.
instead of something that actually happened to me. So I'll be
Mm.
ready to be done with that, and very excited to get cast in something that someone else wrote that I'm not playing myself. I'll be very excited to have that experience. So
Well, I'm really
yeah.
looking forward to not only the release of, or the premiere of your new show, but also to what you get involved with next, because I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. Thank you
Rebecca,
so
it was lovely to
much.
talk to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, take care.
All right, have a good one.
You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next Monday. Tune in.